It's no secret on this channel that I believe critics deserve criticism for their work. After all, their articles are, much like the media they're criticizing, pieces of media that we consume. And while I believe reviews and critiques can bring out certain types of discussion, there's also clearly people who are just good on selling garbage and call it an insightful work. So today, let's have some fun while looking at some of the reviews for the Super Mario Bros. Movie. At least some that apparently are considered worth a damn according to the industry that is journalism. Let's start with a simple one by the New York Post titled Lousy Nintendo Movie Goes Down the Drain. We can already tell where this is going. And for what it's worth, the review is your basic dislike kind of review. The author simply goes out of his way to express he didn't think much of the film, which okay, they're human, they're allowed to like or dislike whatever they want. However, there are a couple of comments that make me wonder if we even saw the same film. I should point out before mentioning this, I'm sorry, there won't be any clips of the film nor trailers. You need to watch the film in order to really understand the problems within these articles. Also, complete spoiler alert, I am not even gonna try to hide it. We're going to talk about the film. Just don't take my word for it, watch the movie so you can formulate your own thoughts. Before our recent screening of the Super Mario Bros. Movie began, a fan sitting in front of me donned his red Mario cap and beamed with excitement. 10 minutes into the film, his hat came off and his enthusiasm came down because he realized that we were all, once again, actually watching Intellectual Property, the movie. Okay, I might be overthinking this, but what kind of sick fuck goes into a movie theater, especially for the sake of analyzing the film for an article they're going to write about it, and spends the first 10 minutes staring at a person's reaction towards the film? Watch the fucking movie instead of somehow knowing what a person in front of you apparently was feeling in a dark room in a position where you couldn't even watch the fan's face. Again, I'm probably overthinking this, but this just didn't sound logical to me. Their cringy it's-a-me Italian accents, we learned, were briefly faked for a Ghostbusters-style commercial to hug their struggling business. But in reality, they talk like normal, very boring dudes. And rising to the occasion, Pratt and they, the official voice actors for Mario and Luigi, provide their characters with very boring voices. Now, when it comes to this point of discussion, I have a hard time really thinking what would have been the best solution. Because I'm pretty sure if they had kept the traditional accents that we hear in the games, you will now then have the same kind of people saying that the dialogue is just cringy. I'm not saying having a regular voice is perfect, I'm just saying that this is a tricky topic. Mario winds up in Peach's Mushroom Kingdom while Luigi is plopped in the dark lands that Bowser lords over. I don't know. Mario enlists the princess's help to find his brother, and she asks him and Toad to protect her and her people from evil Bowser, who wants to get married to her. In New York, they're talentless plumbers. Here, they're heroes. This goes back to what I said at the beginning, how some comments only make me think we didn't watch the same film. Although this author was more focused on people's faces during the film, so I don't know. First off, Luigi is nothing but a guy that's kidnapped by Bowser, while Mario is literally a nobody in the film. He gets himself involved in Peach's struggle against Bowser for the sake of helping Luigi, while everybody else in the Mushroom Kingdom is just asking, "Fuck is this guy?" He's not a hero until the end of the film. You will know that if you didn't spend time looking at people's faces and instead try to pay attention to the film. All the characters make moronic comments that are not funny enough to be called jokes. For instance, Bowser announces to the audience in silence, "I am now the most powerful turtle in the world. Soon we will arrive at the Mushroom Kingdom." And the princess isn't exactly a Mensa candidate either. I don't know what that is. "There's a huge universe out there," she says, "with a lot of galaxies." Again, did we even watch the same film? Those specific pieces of dialogue, they were not jokes, nor were they presented as jokes. Hell, in the Bowser sequence that he mentions, the main joke is that he tells his army that he tries to marry Peach, with one Koopa asking, "Doesn't she hate you? What if she says no?" and then he gets turned into a dry bone. That's the joke in that scene. It may be a good one or a bad one, but it will be ideal to actually use jokes from the movie when talking about jokes from the movie, not random quotes. See, this is something that I have mentioned in previous videos talking about reviews and critics. It's not a matter of whether or not you agree with them or disagree with them. I at least hope not. It's not even about being a good critic or a reviewer. It's about being a good writer. If you suck at writing your thoughts, your work falls apart, no matter what field you're covering, whether it's police reports, reviews, bulletin boards, editorials, movie scripts. You need to know how to write. Now let's move on to another review by Establishing Shot. This one is actually fairly composed, well structured, although it shoots itself in the foot by thinking that you need to be a Mario fan in order to understand the world of the game. Also, that apparently Puss in Boots 2 is an Illumination film. Just food for thought. The new world they're trapped into is called the Mushroom Kingdom. It's a candy-colored world with all kinds of odd creatures, voluminous infrastructure, and crazy roadways that look like they were designed by insane city planners. Much of it will look familiar to those who spawned in the video games. Yet those tropes are never really explained either. Why is this world so beautiful yet crazy looking? This is actually a tricky scenario, but in short, not only this is inaccurate as the movie's world is basically its own setting based on the games, like you never see a world like this in the games themselves. The Mushroom Kingdom never looks like it doesn't in the movie. Like the games never look like the movie. That's all I'm saying. But also, this is an assumption. The author assumes that this is how the world looks in the games, therefore it's a problem that the movie never explains why is that the case. Like I said, while it's wrong to criticize a film purely on assumptions, I can understand being a viewer that is not familiar with the franchise and ends up asking questions and feeling alienated by never having them answered. And you're just told that this is how the world itself works and you just have to deal with it. Additionally, the story schemes over matters too. Why does Bowser with a C, the film's villain, wants to take over this lush land only to destroy it? We never understand what's driving the fire-breathing turtle, and even though he's voiced by Jack Black, his feels have developed as a character. That's especially obvious when he pines for Princess Peach, the candy-colored land's empress. Why does he want her but also wants to lay her kingdom in ruin? As voiced by Anya Taylor-Joy, she's a plucky, modern heroine, but her backstory feels short-shifted too. He does say it though. He says he wants to marry Peach, and if she says no, he will destroy the kingdom. Like it's one or the other. Like not together. The Super Mario Bros. Movie seems to be pitched primarily to die-hard Mario fans, but one shouldn't need the Nintendo cheat book to figure out what's going on here. And that's the problem. You simply assumed that you needed to do homework to understand the movie and decided to feel alienated when in reality you were getting the same experience as everyone else in terms of the movie's narrative. The only thing fans got that you didn't was some of the Easter eggs and the feeling of, oh my god, they did the thing, or oh my god, they said the thing. That's it. I can understand how the movie introduces the kingdom in the same way you will get sucked into the games. Like things just exist and you have to go along with it. That happens in both the games and this movie. I can understand that this can have different results when put into a different medium, of course. In this case, going from video games to movie, like certain things don't work the same. However, it's the same thing that happens in every fantasy world. You're put into a world where things just work in a different way than it does in the real world. It's called suspension of disbelief. I don't want to get too harsh on this, as I can see how this can bring up a certain level of discussion. I just don't think the review presents this problem very well, especially when there's examples of how the author misses key moments of exposition and then criticize the movie like it didn't have them. Then there's the critics that love to sound intelligent but say absolutely nothing of value, nor anything that can actually create discussion, like this review from RobertEbert.com. Fans of this movie will shout from the rooftops that the scripting for something called the Super Mario Bros. Movie doesn't need to be a strength. And to be fair, there are a few strong settings in terms of design. I enjoyed the choices made by the team in the structure of Donkey Kong Country, and the Rainbow Road Super Mario Kart sequence is well directed. But I will ask why fans of a franchise that has inspired so much love for generations must be satisfied with the absolute minimum regarding storytelling. First off, good, go at the fanbase. I'm pretty sure that's a way to engage with readers. Second, boy is it clear you don't know this franchise. Asking for a complex and risky narrative in a Super Mario Bros. Film is like asking for an apple to taste like chicken soup. I'm not saying you cannot have expectations with the film. What I'm saying is that if you knew the franchise like you're claiming to be a fan of, you kinda need to know what to expect yourself from a franchise. Otherwise, let's go ask Disney for Mickey Mouse Modern Warfare. There are so few actual decisions made in the construction of this film. It's just a collection of visual and character references cobbled together to form a 92-minute movie. Take a risk, just do something, anything. It got me thinking about the fun spin-offs that could exist, like a Mad Max Fury Road version of the Mario Kart sequence that gets energy out of non-stop Sorry. Or a version that unpacks like the Lego movie that's more sharply aware of its references and more something that even incorporates the player like that movie does in the end. I swear that almost everyone who has played a game like Odyssey could come up with something more inventive. Heck, almost any 10 minutes of that game is more creative. Oh my god. Now this one is actually more into the fact that you have people claiming that the point of a critic is to be objective. Yet we have people judging a piece of media based on what it could have been rather than what it is. And also using comparisons to determine the quality of a product based on another, regardless of how accurate that comparison might actually be. I repeat, asking for an apple to taste like chicken soup. You cannot say that critics are just people stating their opinions while also claiming that they're the ones looking at a piece of media from an objective point of view. You're either subjective or objective. It cannot be both depending on your personal belief. An opinion is a subjective statement. Having an objective view requires that you manage to actually bring an argument that doesn't involve your beliefs and can be seen as a matter of fact. That's the perception people claim to have with critics, that what they say is a matter of fact. Or at the very least, that's the implication you're giving when you're saying that a critic looks at things objectively. And as I have shown with some examples here, that is objectively not true. From using their own expectations as a metric point to flat out miss pieces of information and blame the movie for it. I thought I was reading movie reviews, not watching a let's play where the player skips the dialogue. And to cap up this clown show, since this is the piece of resistance, it's probably the biggest case of how critics don't know what they're talking about, but they definitely sell themselves like they do.
Now, as I've mentioned before when discussing this movie, I don't play Nintendo games, right? Like I know who the characters are, well, like the big ones, but I'm certainly not a Nintendo fan. But you know, just like I say movies shouldn't require homework, this should be accessible to a non-Nintendo fan, especially if it wants to make $1 billion.
Okay, I'm already regretting it.
Okay, we're starting off strong. First thing I'll say, sure, unless the movie itself is a sequel to another, you shouldn't require extra homework to understand the film. I don't know how you couldn't understand this though, to the point where you're talking about the movie being accessible, especially when Peter's saying that an 8-year-old can get into the film. But whatever, I can agree with that statement somehow.
But then the movie started, and again, out of like 40 of us critics, it was a critics-only screening. The all media is tonight. It was a critics-only screening, and I would say out of 40, maybe 2 people were enjoying and laughing at the movie. They were having a good time though. Maybe you're one of those too. But the rest of us just sat there in stony silence, just waiting for the movie to end. You were like, oh, whew. I mean, I also was not only not enjoying it, but I was shocked that I couldn't get into the movie. I was like, how is this bad?
You see what she did there? I don't blame you didn't notice, but what she basically did right there is that she used her own circle jerk as a method of validation for her own thoughts on the film. Similar to the other author that spent time watching the people watching the film rather than watching the film himself, she goes out of her way to, instead of owning her own shit, she goes into, I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Oh yeah, Grace, go on and say that. I can definitely say the same thing though.
I haven't had this hard a time watching a movie since DC Super Pets. I would describe both of these movies as torture to sit through. And I like comic books, I like mythology, I get into stuff. I'm open to getting into new fandoms.
Remember this bit, please.
So the fact that I was like, make it stop, was pretty bad. Although I wanted to walk out of DC Super Pets, as I told you, and the only reason I stayed was because, I'm reviewing it. I'd love to be able to say, hey, it gets really good. Narrator, it does not.
I want to assume you're going to tell us why you think it's bad. After all, you're building up how much of a torture it was to watch this film. So you must have pretty solid and well-constructed arguments for it, and this video will get better. Narrator, it does not.
But speaking of the amazing visuals, Super Mario Bros. Is available in 3D. And if you like 3D and you're willing to pay a couple extra bucks for it, you might want to consider it. Also, maybe as a safety net, because the movie's so bad, at least you'll have peak visuals. Particularly the Mario Kart sequences. When I was watching those, I was like, wow, I bet these would look pretty good in 3D. I mean, I think the movie's actually been made to be seen in 3D. I think they should be advertising that more.
Because, as you know, 3D media has been getting bigger and better and has nowhere near become a facade to the point where Nintendo and the filmmaker that pretty much built the latest boom for 3D movie themselves stopped bothering with it. It's funny when people that claim to be really into the industry have less understanding of how the industry is supported than Scott the Woz.
So I thought about it, I saw it last night, and I've been like, why couldn't I get into this movie? And this morning, eureka, it clicked. But while this is supposed to be an origin story where Mario and Luigi do discover the Mushroom Kingdom for the very first time, I didn't even know it was called the Mushroom Kingdom. I had to look it up. It's not even made clear in the movie. But the movie is written for fans and fans only. Nothing is explained to the audience.
Again, I cannot show the clip itself due to copyright, but they do. The moment Mario jumps into the kingdom and meets Toad, he flat out says it's the Mushroom Kingdom. So at that point, Grace is showing a fallacy, because the mere moment we can identify how the movie immediately tells you this is the Mushroom Kingdom, the generalized statement that the movie doesn't explain anything to you is automatically false.
Good screenwriter, screenwriting, it's always been disrespected in Hollywood, but this is it's at its lowest point right now. Like, a good screenwriter can make this fun for everyone, right?
I wonder why screenwriters are disrespected in Hollywood. Just look at how respectful this person is when bringing up an entire profession. While we already established this critic blames the movie for not explaining things she didn't notice when they were explained.
There's no story. Well, and what little story they do have, I found a couple of things. One was confusing. Like, why don't any of the other humans look like Mario and his family? And why is the human world super realistic, yet full of cartoon-looking characters? I was like, that's weird.
Why do people from one world look so different from the ones that live in a completely different world? I cannot figure to find an explanation that you may not want to skip to and blame me for not getting it either.
Back to the story, I would also say it's a little disturbing. Because apparently in the games, Bowser, I had to look it up, Bowser is obsessed with Princess Peach and has been for a very long time. But in today's marketplace, post-Me Too, to hear Bowser declare that he's going to ask Princess Peach to marry him, which apparently isn't a spoiler because I looked it up and it happens in the games all the time, but he's like, I'm gonna ask Princess Peach to marry me, and his little sycophant sorcerer is like, what if she doesn't want to? And he's like, then I'll destroy her kingdom and kill everyone she knows. And you're like, wow, that's stalker behavior. And I would say, kind of makes this not appropriate for children, quite frankly.
How was it? Critics look at movies subjectively? Yeah, sure, I'm pretty sure bringing politics into a movie or any piece of media that's nowhere near tackling a political message is an objective observation. It's sort of a relief to see that this type of criticism isn't exclusive to video games. Apparently the entire industry is brain dead. Grace, since you're already doing research, look up Anita Sarkeesian. You're not new. Also, since you clearly didn't pay attention, Bowser is the villain. He's the one we're supposed to dislike and hope he doesn't succeed at his plan of forcing Peach to marry him. Which, spoiler, since the 1980s, he always loses. So you're gonna have to explain to me how is it inappropriate for children to see a stalker getting defeated for very disgusting behavior.
And I would argue that most of the movie is about who's going to date Princess Peach. And that's it. My jaw was on the floor. I'm like, is that really what this movie is about? That is a really outdated story. I think fans and just moviegoers in general, and everybody associated with this film, deserve more.
Okay, fuck Luigi, I guess. Fuck the several kingdoms that were being taken over by Bowser. Fuck the family relationship between Mario and Luigi. You know, the Super Mario Brothers. Fuck Toad. Fuck the way Peach and Mario start developing. No, it's all about dating Peach. Did you even actually try to watch the film? Or were you busy focusing on reactions too? You see, you claim that you are open to get into new fandoms, yet because you call yourself a critic, you talk like your opinion as an outsider is more valid than those who are familiar with the franchise. Not just as much, which will be a different argument, I really mean it. But you think you're more valid than everyone else. When no, you're either equally valid, if not actually less, since you don't know what you're talking about.
Speaking of disturbing, I would also classify this movie as a little offensive, because instead of doing the Italian accents, ironically because they were worried about being offensive, instead they decided to give everyone a variation of a New York accent, which again I found kind of offensive. It's like everyone's either in Goodfellas or a Woody Allen movie.
See, this is what I meant with a previous critic. And it's a general thing with these types of critics that bring social political topics in a media in which that's not the focus. If they had gone full on Charles Martinet's accent, it would have been offensive. And if they did the Brooklyn accent, because they established there for Brooklyn, people still find it offensive. At that point, I begin to wonder if you're the one with the fucked up racist point of view, because not everyone is actually thinking that. You see how easy it is to accuse someone of very horrible shit?
The movie also leans really heavily on classic hit songs, a little bit the way Guardians of the Galaxy has done. And sometimes it gets your blood pumping. It's not a bad strategy. But here it's very poorly executed. Like everything, just when you're like, okay, now we're cooking, it peters out. And they're like, okay, we're done. And you're like, oh, you promised me a fun jam.
Here's the thing, and I cannot stress this enough. It's okay that you're not familiar with the series. I mentioned this in a previous reviewer. It's definitely valid to bring an opinion as someone who isn't familiar with the franchise. It can definitely bring a perspective that fans cannot understand and thus bring different conversations. This isn't someone bringing a perspective though. This is establishing clearly subjective elements within the film as not only a fact, but also a negative. You clearly are an Illumination fan. You like the way they work their formula. Not everyone likes the pop culture selection of soundtracks though. In fact, this movie uses renditions from the franchise's soundtrack, which some people have seen as a positive since, well, the Mario series has great music. In fact, I say that her opinion on the music selection is only subjective based on the fact that this happens like 3 times in the film. Everything else is based on the Mario series, which makes those music choices that feel like they came from Guardians of the Galaxy stick out like a sore thumb since they don't fit with 90% of the movie's music. Imagine having a soundtrack that's mostly focused on this kind of tone. And then get Take Me On. I'm not saying she's not allowed to have a musical preference. She just thought like someone who claims that musical tone is the fact and it's a detriment to the film that she doesn't get that taste pleased.
But I did really like Anya Taylor-Joy. She is always a delight as an actress on screen, but it turns out she has a great voice for animation as well. And she's a great sport. Look what she wore to the premiere for the movie. A variation on Princess Peach's Mario Kart outfit. I thought that was great. I am a little tired, though, of girl power for the sake of girl power characters. Like, if you're not going to fully develop them, I just get frustrated because I know certain groups are going to complain. Speaking of disturbing, I would also classify this movie as a little offensive because instead of doing the Italian accents, ironically because they were worried about being offensive, instead they decided to give everyone a variation of a New York accent, which again I found kind of offensive. It's like everyone's either in Goodfellas or a Woody Allen movie.
No, and it's like, who are you that self-unaware?
She's the fucking princess, and it's established very early on that she's a very skilled fighter. and she has a lot of competent moments in the film. Oh, I get it. Because you didn't get girl power in a very specific way, then the girl power isn't actually there. See, there's a bit of a funny double standard of how people tend to say that if shows from the 2000s and 90s came out today, a lot of people will riot and call everything woke or some shit. Despite how they criticize any piece of media that doesn't follow their template for correct representation. Yes, certain groups did complain about the way Peach was being portrayed as girl power, but guess what? People find both sides of the argument equally stupid. Why? Because you're not even talking about the movie anymore. You're talking about your social checklist and how this movie didn't fit your political beliefs. She's the one that came up with the idea of forming an alliance with the Kongs. She focuses on the kingdom's safety. She fights back against Bowser.
I didn't see her make any rules or control the kingdom or anything. You know, she just kind of went on a date with Mario and Bowser was really jealous about it. And you're like, is this really what this movie is about?
No, that's not what the movie is about. Anybody that actually sees the film and pays attention to the script knows that the movie is not about that. The fact that you ignore most of the story and use real-world problems as a way to criticize a form of fiction is not only incredibly disgusting as it shows your lack of care for the subject matter, otherwise you'll be focused on more than a movie where bullets are alive to talk about political things, but it also shows your incompetence as a critic. You talk about how Mario and Luigi's relationship is forced.
Mario and Luigi's relationship just seems really forced. It's like screenwriter Matthew Fogel, who should never work again, he's done a couple of stuff for Illumination, that's about it. It's like he saw Frozen and decided to do the male version of Elsa and Anna, but none of the work to make it work.
Despite how it's the very first thing that the movie focuses on before the Mushroom Kingdom even appears.
And since they insisted on putting Mario in the real world, so to speak, why do he and Luigi wear those funny outfits and gloves? I was like, you guys look ridiculous.
There's there's literally a scene with Mario's family where they talk about how they intentionally try to stick out with those outfits. Meanwhile, you're forcing this narrative that the movie is all about dating Peach, despite how that's focused for like 5 minutes of the actual film. You criticize how the action sequences act like they're from the game, despite admitting you don't play them and even showing your ignorance by questioning the power-ups.
Even the action sequences aren't that exciting. There's like no suspense. It's just like, oh hey look, it's like the game. But you never really feel like you're running any of the gauntlets yourself. You still look like you're watching the game screen instead of being put into the action. That's the whole benefit of making it a movie.
Again, it's okay that you're not familiar with it. Just don't act like you need to know to get the film.
And then, when could Mario turn into a cat? I guess, like, if you're into furries, that works. And maybe that'll play really well in Asian markets. I know they love cats over there, like, love cats. But I just felt it robbed Mario of a lot of his personal dignity. I was like, don't do that to Mario. Where's Mario's agent? There are also 2 end credit scenes, but they're not really noteworthy. One's comedic, the second one tries to set up a potential sequel. They're like, oh, if we make another one of these, this character's gonna show up, get excited. But that character kind of showed up earlier in the film, in the background, in a way, like at least a variation of them. I spotted him.
Okay, that I can understand.
And this end credit scene is so quick that it's hard to get super excited unless you're just so excited about that character. Just like the mere tease or mention or like blip of him is enough.
And you lost me with your short attention span yet again.
So yeah, this is a mess. There's no story, nothing is explained to newbies like myself. It's kind of offensive, and none of the animation styles fit together because I guess maybe they're different games. I mean, I guess it looks this way in Mario Kart, right? But from a story perspective, it just did not work for me. I have never seen an Illumination misfire this bad. In fact, I don't think they've ever misfired. This is not only the worst movie they've ever made, but in my opinion, the only bad movie they've ever made. And maybe what's different here? It's because Nintendo was so involved creatively, as you can see from the credits when you watch the movie.
And that last statement is probably the best way to showcase how incompetent critics can be. If you can't even fact check the pattern with how Illumination gets critically received, yet talk out of your ass like you know what you're talking about, and spread your thoughts like it's a matter of fact, then not only are you not creating an objective piece of criticism, you're spreading misinformation and overall creating a review in bad faith based on your own beliefs. There's nothing that can justify this final video as a constructive piece of media. And the worst part is, people defend this shit. People defend this type of content that insults a fanbase creators, cast, and basically anybody that disagrees with their viewpoint of the world.
If you aren't a fan of the games, you've been warned. But maybe you need to go with somebody who is a Nintendo fan. It's gonna be rough for you. I pity you. But just remember what good friend you're being. And maybe before the movie starts, ask your Nintendo fan friend to explain some of this stuff to you, which might make it a little less painful. But I'll be honest with you, I don't even really think your Nintendo fan friend is gonna like this.
Which only shows me that most likely they are defending pieces of media that they don't even consume. Which to those I shall say, with little to no respect, if you're defending critics without knowing what they're saying, don't. Because you're literally ignorant on what you're talking about. Yes, not every critic is a jaded hater that doesn't actually like anything they watch. And not every critic looks at a film with an objective view. We have seen both arguments here. And if you're actually interested in what critics are saying about this film, don't generalize any side. It's possible that even those who like the film are making statements that don't speak objectively of the film. Look at critics and their works individually. Not every critic is an ignorant scumbag, nor does everything they write fall into that category. They wrote a review that can be criticized. That's it. Their next work might be better or worse than the previous one, and if they're clearly influenced by something that makes the reviews more subjective than anything, and you're looking for something that's more into the objective side of things, then luckily there's plenty of critics out there that are waiting for an audience. But I completely believe that critics are just as worthy of criticism as the media they criticize. First off, it will be incredibly hypocritical to be a critic that rejects criticism. Like seriously, what is your damage with that? Secondly, the debate about the value of critics, whether you personally find value in them or not, shows that there's an audience that consumes critics, that pays attention to what they say, so much like movies, games, or any form of media. Therefore, that audience also deserves better. And what's the way for better criticism? Fuck if I know. I can't speak for you on what you want, because in the gray line, we're all right and wrong at the same time. Thanks for listening.